Welcome back, fans, to the latest edition of the NEC On the Run Hoops podcast. I'm Ron Ratner. I'm here with Ryan Peters, and we will break it all down for you after the third week of NEC play. Ryan, as always, let's start with the weekend takeaways. Ryan, if I told you back in October at NEC Media Day that after week 3, Merrimack would be in first place in the NEC standings all alone, what would you have said?
I probably would have thought you were crazy, but I knew Merrimack was going to be pretty good. I picked them 8th in the preseason, but to be 6-1 at this point, to be first in turnover rate defensively, to be second in defensive efficiency, first in points allowed per game. I mean, they're just doing it at all levels. Three big wins. They beat Bryant in a close one. They were trailing by 7 late in the second half, but they went on to a 13-2 run to take control of that game. Jaleel Lord scores the last 6 points against Robert Morris in kind of an eye-opening upset at the UPMC Center. And then, in Loretto, they're trailing by 8 late in the first half. They go on a 10-2 run, and then the Warriors just take control in that second half, outscoring the Red Flash by 17. Idris Joyner goes off for 28 points. I can't say enough about this team. The balance that this team has, Ron. I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but they have 5 guys who are between 7.0 and 9.9 points per game. They don't have a single guy averaging double figures. Have you ever seen this before from a team at the top or near the top of the standings?
I remember we had talked about this earlier, and I think the only one that's even been close was Robert Morris back in 2009-10, where they only had one double-figure scorer and pretty much dominated the NEC that year. So it definitely is rare to see a team without that star. You would think that a team at the top of the standings is going to be star-driven in some way, but they do have stars, but maybe they're on the other side of the ball.
Oh, yeah, defensively, obviously, you put Watkins and Hayes, at the top of that 2-3 zone, and the amount of turnovers they're generating, the points they're creating off those turnovers is incredible. And then, you look at Lord, Hayes, Joyner, Watkins, Jensen, they hang their hat on. Merrimack hangs their hat on. They're very tough to scout against. Depending on what the defense gives them, Hayes could go off and create his dribble penetration if the defense allows it. Jensen can hit a few threes and change the complexion of the game. Joyner's an inside-out, kind of undersized 4-5 in the NEC that could take a game over like he did against St. Francis. So they have a number of different guys that could do it in different levels.
Merrimack becomes the first team to sweep their Western PA swing since Wagner back in late January of 2018. Now 6-1 in the conference, half game ahead of Robert Morris in the NEC standings. Ryan, a team making their move up the NEC standings is Mount St. Mary's. They've won 3 straight now after a 1-2 start. What's led to the turnaround?
I mean, it's a 3-headed monster. Damian Chankui, we've talked about him here before, how good he is, how he changes the game at the point guard position. But then Malik Jefferson and Nana Poku, they're just changing the game. It's one of the best front courts in the league right now. Jefferson, in the last 5 games has 78 points, 41 rebounds, 4 blocks, shooting 60% from the floor. But then, he has kind of an off game against St. Francis Brooklyn, and Nana Poku has a career high effort, following that. So, they're getting production. They're playing defense now. What a difference a year makes. Last year they're 1-5 in the league. This year they're 4-2 at the same point. They're playing much better defense. I think they're 3rd in defensive efficiency. Field goal percentage is really low for their opponents. I think opponents are only shooting 27% from 3 against the Mount. So Dan Engelset has his team communicating well, playing really good defense, and then they're opportunistic on the offensive end.
Yeah, you're right on, Ryan. 2 convincing wins over the weekend. They allowed 0.73 points per possession in those wins. Another thing to think about, you were talking about the front court, is how they're attacking the boards this year.
Yeah, Jefferson's one of the best rebounders in the game. Opoku is so hoppy, around the rim. It's also different. Last year they couldn't rebound, right? Now they're getting defensive rebounds. They're not allowing second chance opportunity for opponents, and it created a world of difference.
Mount 2nd in the NEC in rebound margin in NEC play. So let's break down the standings a bit right here. Merrimack in first, tied in the loss column with Robert Morris, and we'll get to Robert Morris a little later. Colonials at 5-1. Right behind there, crowded at the top, you have SFU at 5-2, LIU and the Mount at 4-2. Ryan, even though they're coming both off losses, St. Francis U and LIU, they've been playing some pretty good ball as of late.
Yeah, St. Francis 10-2 in their last 12. LIU, the Wagner blemish aside, they're 4-1 in their last 5. And you look at Jared Grasso's press conference when LIU beat Bryant earlier in the year, and he said, I shouldn't say this, but they are the most talented team in the league.
You're absolutely right, Ryan. Look at the experience on that team with a redshirt senior in Clark and 2 senior starting guards in Agosto and Batts. And then you throw in transfers who have competed at a high level in Flowers and in Jermaine Jackson. That's a team that down the line, they're going to be a problem.
Yeah, no, there isn't an NEC coach that wants to see them in the first round of the NEC tournament for sure. Right? They could finish first, they could finish second, they could finish 6th in the league. No coach wants to see them lined up in the quarterfinals.
And it's really the same with the Flash, with Keith Braxton and Isaiah Black. When you have 2 of the best players in the league and you have that sort of senior-dominated team, they've been through pretty much everything in their careers. When it gets down to March, you figure they're going to be right in the hunt for the top spot, or certainly a top 4 spot to host a game.
Sure, and then also you throw senior Randall Gaskins in there too, a great 2-way player for Rob Kreml. Yeah, Blackman and Braxton are just so invaluable. A lot of people are talking about Braxton as one of the best players in the league, but Isaiah Blackman leads the league in scoring right now in conference games, I think at over 21 points a game, so he's really invaluable to the Red Flash moving forward.
Finally, last thing on the weekend takeaways, Ryan, just quickly wanted to get your thoughts. FDU, Wagner, both stop losing streaks on Monday, and convincingly so. FDU beats Central. Wagner beats, as we discussed, a very good LIU team. Could this be sort of a launch point for both programs?
Possibly. I mean, you have to hold serve at home. If you want to compete, if you want to get to the middle of the pack, and you're at 1-4, you kind of have to win those games. I caution saying they're must-wins, but you look at Wagner, a pivotal win against LIU. Curtis Cobb, when he's scoring, when he's shooting threes and making them, Wagner's going to go a long way. Bashir Mason has told me Alex Morales, pound for pound, is the best playmaker on this team. Using his dribble penetration, his ability to kind of fill up the stat sheet in different ways. They have a lot of talent in that team too.
And as far as FDU, they went 1-1 last week. They shot better than 50% for the week, averaged 84 points a game. This is a team that can score some points, and Jaleel Jenkins is playing just at an elite level at this point in his career.
Jenkins is one of the best point guards in the league, but you pair him with Brandon Powell. Powell's playing much better of late, 13-8 in that win against Central Connecticut. When he's that 2 guard alongside Jenkins, and then you have Malone Key and his athleticism, and then obviously the front court with Bishop and Williams. There's a lot of talent there. FDU can absolutely compete with anybody in the league.
Yeah, it would not surprise me to see FDU go on a tear at some point. Last year, they started 1-4 in league play, on their way to an NEC championship. Still so much talent in Hackensack. Ryan, it's time for our Twitter timeout. We've already talked about Nana Opoku, and he is the subject of this week's Twitter timeout. Right there from Mount Athletics, Nana Opoku. That is the tweet. It's his SportsCenter top 10 top play of the day on Monday. This dunk where he pretty much just hurdles another human being. What a dunk by Nana. This the best one you've seen this year?
It's up there. There's been a few of them. Unique McLean had the offensive putback and a win at Wagner, but this one, I mean, the athleticism, his ability to rim run. I mean, I think the Mount actually was calling, they want to be part of the Twitter timeout, and they ask and they shall receive with this one because Opoku brought down the house.
I think I'm going to do a Twitter poll, dunk contest. Who do you got? I'm going to ask you quick. We go AJ Brahma, Nana Opoku, Caleb Bishop, Unique McLean. Who's your guy?
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot here, Ron. That's a tough one. I mean, Isaiah Blackman.
Isaiah Blackman's another one. Yeah. Who you got?
Greg Outlaw for Central Connecticut.
Oh man,
he's oozing athleticism.
Ryan does not want to make a pick. We will get into this maybe on a later show. That was our Twitter timeout. Now we highlight our under the radar player. Who you got, Brian?
I'm gonna go with Julian Batts for LIU. He didn't have the best game against Wagner, but he's been really reliable for Derek Kellogg. Just a solid role player in that deep backcourt. The biggest attribute he really brings to LIU is he can make the three. He's been red hot, making 13 of 21 in league plays for 61%. But also, too, he takes care of the basketball, a 2-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio. Kind of an invaluable, certainly under-the-radar guy, in my opinion.
When Julian Batts is hitting his shots from distance, LIU is tough to beat. He's our under-the-radar player this week. Now it's time for our Star Watch. Ryan, we've talked about Merrimack and how it's such a balanced attack, but someone kind of broke out of the pack this past week for them. Who is it?
Yeah, Idris Joyner. He's, we can no longer ignore the impact that he's had on the Warriors over this 5-game run. The 6'5" senior, actually, he may be all of 6'3.5" inches, what I've been told, but with long arms, a savvy approach around the rim, he's adept at finding angles to finish and finding the open spots on the floor. And he really broke out that 28-point performance at St. Francis University. But over the last 5 games, he's averaged over 16 points, 6.2 rebounds per game, shooting close to 70% from the field. He's been terrific for Joe Gallo.
Hit 11 out of 12 in Monday's win at St. Francis. Merrimack climbing the charts. Idris Joyner, one of the reasons why. Next on our list, it's the play of the week, and it comes from Monday night. Moon Township at the UPMC Event Center. I was courtside for this one. What a play it was, one of the best of the year. A.J. Brahma blocks the three-pointer, starts the fast break. Then Josh Williams rewards him, throwing it off the backboard, and Brahma slams it home. Ryan, what do you make of this play? This is one of the best individual plays you'll see.
Oh, his versatility is something else, on both ends of the floor. It was on full display. He guards, he's on the guard in the perimeter, and Andy Toole can switch because Brahma is so athletic, he's so quick. He's kind of a wiry guy. He could keep up with a guy like Raekwon Clark on the perimeter, blocks his shot, and then just full sprint down the floor, and Josh Williams rewards him. That's wonderful for the big man.
What a game for A.J. Brahma, career high 18 points, ties a Robert Morris record with 20 rebounds, hits all 9 of his shots from the floor. It was a star-making performance for A.J. Brahma. He also had our play of the week. Time for our NEC Milestones. Let's start in Brooklyn with LIU's Raekwon Clark. Raekwon, this past week, cracked the top 20 on the NEC's career scoring chart. Now has 1,763 points as he guns for 2,000 before the end of his career. How impressive is Raekwon Clark? What has he meant to this LIU program?
Oh, everything. I mean, his ability to just put his head down and put it on the deck and just get to the rim, even though the opponent knows exactly what he's going to do. All the free throws he generates, attacking off the dribble, just creates a lot of shooting opportunities for other people, opens up the floor. He's been invaluable for Derek Kellogg.
A relentless motor for Raekwon Clark, every game, every possession. And we have to go back, as always, to Keith Braxton to track his chart climbs. Now in rebounding, he has moved up to 2nd all-time behind Jalen Cannon. He's now 114 rebounds behind. And in scoring, he's a little bit ahead of Raekwon Clark. He's 16th all-time with 1,800 points, still right on pace to get 2,000 points, 1,000 rebounds. He'd be the first to ever do it in the 39-year history of the conference.
So does he catch Jalen? I mean, he needs, what?
We got to do some math here.
About 10 rebounds per game over the next, 12, 13 games. I think it's possible.
He's right there in the NEC tournament, and especially if they make a run into the tournament, you think he'd have a really good chance of doing that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And he's all of 6'4".
Incredible. Keith Braxton. Finally, before we go, I want to mention Javaris Hayes. He is now 2 steals shy of moving to 2nd place all time on the NCAA career steals list. He has 412 career steals. The record, 448. So he has some time to catch up to that one as well. Now it's time for our games to watch. No NEC TV this week, but there are some interesting games on the slate. What do you have, Ryan?
So for Thursday, FDU going up to Merrimack to play. It'll be interesting. Greg Herenda is returning to Hamill Court up there in Merrimack. Joe Gallo and Greg Herenda both were coached by legendary Bert Hamill. It's kind of interesting because they're both 2 distinct personalities, 2 distinct coaching styles. It'll be Greg's first time back as a Division I coach to Merrimack.
That's our Thursday game to watch. What's happening on Saturday?
I like Robert Morris at LIU. I kind of think back to the past decade when they had those great, NEC tournament final games. Andy Toole against Jim Ferry. Those were just some terrific games. One of the best games in the decade, you probably would argue. Just to see, We talked about the talent at LIU, but Robert Morris, very deep. They have 8 guys that they could play. Jalen Hawkins, Savion McEwing, shooting threes off the bench. Brahma, we already talked about as a playmaker. So you combine that with obviously the deep backcourt that LIU Brooklyn has, Ty Flowers, Raekwon Clark. It's going to be a really interesting matchup. It could be a high-scoring affair.
5-1 Robert Morris, 4-2 LIU at this point. They'll be meeting up in a battle of NEC contenders on Saturday in Brooklyn. That's it for this week's edition of the NEC On the Run Hoops podcast. I want to thank, of course, Ryan Peters. He's on Twitter at Pioneer_Pride. He's also a featured writer on the NEC Overtime blog. This week, tune in to NEC Front Row and the NEC On the Run series of apps to catch all the NEC action for free. We'll see you next week.